The sun is down at the SDFC in downtown Phoenix, and it's time for the Greek Freaks to be on the doorstep of history. A win tonight against the Detroit Pistons, and they're on to the playoffs and keep on winning games, moving to 2-0 for the first time in program history. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Greek Freaks pregame show. I'm Mihir Sinhasan, and thanks for tuning in on this Tuesday evening. We have a lot to talk about the Greek Freaks, who are 1-0 for the first time in franchise history. So without further ado, let's get to the highlights of their game against the Flint Tropics last week. First half, the defense shows up big. Transition points working like clockwork early in the first half. They were up 16-5 when the Flint Tropics called their first timeout. They were up 25-12 at the end of the first. And hey, the layups worked well in the first half. Let's try sending some from downtown in the second, and that's what they did. And getting the party started and keeping the party going was Tom Penn. Now, you could ask Tom, you could tell Tom, hey, you know what, you weren't in the starting lineup. You could say you were playing the left bench to start off this game. Tom would say, well, I'm not playing left bench. I'm playing on the left wing. Not only that, I'm owning the left wing as he sinks this three. And of course, this team was out for historics as they were on their way to victory, so they decided to go for a little Gordie Howe hat trick at the end. Luke Foster going into the boards, getting a little bit of a collision, getting a little bit of a fight as well, but in pure Luke Foster and pure Pat McAfee fashion, he shakes it off, getting a little laugh as he goes to the sideline. Greek Freaks win the game 57-35. A big day for the Greek Freaks in terms of career highs. Tom Penn with 21 points, going 4 for 9 in terms of his shooting from beyond the arc. Jacob Mitkoff with 14 points and 5 steals. I talked to Jacob after the game, and this is what he had to say about the overall growth he has made in the program.
It's just, the atmosphere feels so much different than the previous seasons. I mean, you saw it out there, we're playing together, having a good time, playing free, not uptight.
And rounding out the scoring in double digits for the Greek Freaks, Henry Smarto, who averaged a double-double in his first 2 games last year, replicating it in the first game this year with 11 points and 11 rebounds. Some other interesting stats from this game were just from the overall team, as everybody who was healthy for the game played at least 8 minutes on the court. And in terms of team stats, they had 13 assists and 15 steals. They had 13 assists, obviously, and 10 steals in Season 3. And so, it's time for another segment called Those Freaking Injuries. And it is definitely much less from what we saw last week. Kavish Siddhartha, questionable now with an ankle injury. The Gucci man was in the head coach spot for an ill Andrew Durst. He could have a chance to play. He could be on the bench being the assistant coach spot, as we've seen a few times before with other players.
And Luke Foster is questionable with work.
We have a healthy head coach Andrew Durst, who we'll speak to later, and a healthy Declan Membrilla. Sexy Dexy with a lot of time last year, especially coming off the bench, will provide some depth for the Greek Freaks this season. Let's take a look at the Detroit Pistons, who will be tipping off against the Greek Freaks in just a few moments at 9 p.m. Phoenix time. This is the first clinching game for the Greek Freaks since the Dream Team. Now, keep in mind, you need a 500 record or better to make the playoffs. So that is to say, because these games, presumably, don't go to overtime, if the Greek Freaks tie this game, let alone win, they will still make the playoffs. The Detroit Pistons, on the other side, come into this game 0-1 in the season. They're fighting for their playoff lives and need a win or a tie to keep them alive. Speaking of which, I talk about the clinching game. We have not seen one in about 12 months when the Greek Freaks played the Dream Team. After getting a win off of forfeits, they were 1-1-0 going into this game, and it was a very close game down the stretch. Very end-to-end at the start. Abe Mogelson leading the charge. He was runaway Abe Mogelson to the best in that game. He was an absolute dog. And then in the second half, things started to work more in the Greek Freaks' favor. Holding the lead, holding command, Jack McCarthy with this big three from the left wing. But then the Dream Team spoils the Greek Freaks at the end to get on the buzzer beater. They wrap up the season with an undefeated season with that tie. The Greek Freaks stumble into the playoffs, ended up losing 40-34 to Binkus in the first round. We'll take a break, and then head coach Andrew Durst will be joining me live in studio to talk about Coach's Corner, the first Coach's Corner of 2024. We'll be discussing the win, we'll be discussing injuries, players, and what to look forward to in this upcoming game. Welcome back to the Greek Freaks pregame show. I'm Mihir Sinhasan, joined by head coach of the Greek Freaks, Andrew Durst, for the first Coach's Corner of 2024. Coach, I know you were ill last week. How are you feeling?
A little better. Ready to coach and ready to get my first win as not an interim coach or a kind of assistant coach that was also coaching. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting matchup in terms of coaching. You let Kavish Siddhartha take the reins. You were there on the bench, and as you were mentioning before, a little bit of deja vu as your first victory as head coach also came as an interim. Talk to me about the process of putting Kavish in the reins for that game and just talk about his execution overall.
I mean, yeah, now he knows what the struggle is like, having like 8, 9 guys all being like, oh, I want to play, and having all this kind of stuff you have to do. But he did a really great job. I mean, me and him actually, right before I was here, went over the minutes and kind of what we thought he did well, what we can improve on, especially getting more players hopefully back this week. We thought he did a really good job. Obviously, the score allowed us to get a lot more depth in there, but I think he did really good with his subs. Jason was kind of on a minutes limit because of his sickness. And yeah, I think he did a really good job. And now he kind of understands when he's in the game, all the things that are happening on the coaching end as well.
Now let's take a look at the offense to defense, and more importantly, the defense to offense.
Yeah.
In transition was absolutely incredible last week. What were you seeing on the sideline, and how did it feel to finally have that offense come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, it felt great seeing us get like back-to-back turnovers, whether it be Jacob stealing or Tom stealing, or just, they're missing shots and we're going down and getting better looks. Our 2-point percentage, I know, was really good. Threes still can't get to go. I mean, Jack couldn't get them. Jacob had a couple good ones, but still couldn't get percentage-wise. But then Tom exploded in the second half, and he shot, I think, 4 for 6, 4 for 7 from 3. I mean, we looked really good. We looked good on both sides of the ball, and we know we have an elite defense. I mean, we held them to 12 points in the first half and pretty much the same in the second half until it's garbage time. So, I mean, we know we only need to score 40 points to win a game, but we still need to get that flow on offense better just to kind of keep our momentum up. But I think they looked really good, and there's a few things we can improve, maybe some turnovers, some shooting, but I really like the performance.
Yeah. All right. Now, taking a look at this game against Detroit Pistons, they come in 0-1, you come in 1-0. You, with a win or a tie, can go to the playoffs for the second time in program history.
It sounds good.
Does it feel?
It sounds good. I mean, in game 2, I mean, for us to be already talking about clinching with, it's been a week since the season started. This is my first real game. I mean, I was sick. I didn't even think I was going to be there. I mean, it feels great. I mean, if we know anything about the Detroit Pistons, they're going to lose. And this team gave up the most points in the league last week. I think it was like 74, I would say.
I think so.
Excuse me. I mean, it feels good. It's a winnable game for us, which we can't always say. I mean, last year we played the best schedule, I think, in the league. We played like 2 of the top 3 teams and another really good team, and we were still in those games. So now we're against competition that's a little lower. It's the question of whether we play down to that competition or we can actually elevate like we did last week and hopefully get ourselves into another playoff spot. A 2-win season for the first time. Oh, it just sounds too good, Mihir. It makes me real excited, but we got to go out and execute, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Executing, the biggest thing for the Greek Freaks is trying to go 2-0 for the first time in program history, returning to the playoffs for the second time in program history. If it would be the case, it would be 2 of 4 seasons that would be going. Coach Durst, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for the Greek Freaks pregame show. Tempe is calling the Greek Freaks' name, and they're just 40 minutes away from getting there. For the call, Mihir Sinhasan.